This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
Good evening, good afternoon, High Top Sports Oregon. Welcome back, boys and girls, to another episode. I'm here with the Duck, Derek the Duck Zelmer. You landed yourselves a big one today, boys and girls. We're going to talk about Cody Green. We already made the announcement. If you haven't seen that video, we break him down a little bit more. We will glaze over it a little bit, but today got some practice notes. We're going to go over some fall camp. We got a week left, and then it's showtime. Then it's kind of into the game routine, and then you're going to give us your breakout players as well. And then I've got some odds to talk about Big Ten stuff because this show is brought to you by and powered by BetUS. But Derek the Duck, how you feeling about the big time commit today in Cody Green?
Yeah, especially after you've been oh so kind to remind me on some of the guys we've missed out on recently. It's really nice to have one land with the Ducks for a change. Obviously a major piece. I know, like you said, we had posted the update already and we kind of talk about it a little more in depth there, but just a major piece to this 26 class already. I did see he's the piece that pushes Oregon over the top, so they now have the number one recruiting class, according to On3, in the 2026 cycle. So, that's pretty exciting to see. I think they're also leading the country in average in terms of the 26 class. So it's Dan's continuing to do his thing, bringing in these big time commits at the premium positions. And I think this is just another one of those guys that fit that mold.
Look, they still have a great class right now. That number one class seems a little further than it did at one point, just given the flips and given who you thought you were going to get. But starting off already number one with the highest quality class in 2026, that could be the goal. Look, these are offseason goals that are fun to chase. It's not the end of the world, but it is something fun to measure and fun to keep track of. So kudos to you guys for having that number one class in 2026 early on. So let's talk about some spring notes though. Obviously we got, again, did you have a scrimmage on Saturday? I know a lot of people had scrimmages this week. Did we get a scrimmage in?
Yes. Yeah, we did get a small scrimmage in once again, to be expected. Not a lot of access was given to the scrimmage on Saturday, but albeit there was football happening at Autzen Stadium on a Saturday. So, obviously can't complain about that. And, I know we were talking about, Dan's little post-game or, post-practice pressers or whatever, and he gives absolutely zero information. Dan Lanning is the absolute king of saying the most without actually saying any valuable information whatsoever. He's made a living out of that one, so kudos to Dan. But yeah, what we're hearing out of Saturday, it sounds like it was a highly competitive scrimmage. I know he alluded to, in terms of the offense, he sounded like he was really pleased with the offense, noted there was a lot of consistency there, particularly among a lot of the newcomers, just kind of adapting to the new system and figuring out the intricacies of that. One thing I know he did mention was that albeit there was a lot of consistency that was happening on the offensive side of the ball, there was a lack of explosive plays. That's one where it's really hard for me to get too worked up about something like that one way or the other, because, you can look at it as either A, the offense may not be functioning to their full capability yet, or B, all these players that you brought in on the defensive side of the ball are coming in and doing exactly what you brought them in to do. But he was pleased with the offense. Defense, noted that the tackling was something that was, going very well this spring, which is not something we're used to hearing out of Dan Lanning. He tends to be very critical of tackling and that sort of thing. But, here we are a couple practices into fall camp, and that's one of the things he's critiquing in a positive way. So lots of good stuff to look forward to from the Ducks. I do wish we had a little more media access. Today's practice, obviously there was no media access available today. Just so what we're able to get out of some of the guys who are actually in practice and, the post-practice interviews. But yeah, it sounds like there's a whole lot of, continuing to learn the new system. I know this is a pretty complex offense and defensive schematically that Oregon runs. So a lot of moving parts and a lot of new pieces, obviously. So it's really important that those guys get acclimated, and it sounds like they're well on their way to doing so.
It sounds like you took Billy's script book. I mean, Billy said the same thing. More explosive plays, more tempo. They tackled they tackled better, but then there was a stat that came out that sent Florida into an absolute frenzy. I do find it interesting how each team operates. So look, Florida didn't have much access either. The noise from Florida, which if you take a look from the Oregon side, that's why I was kind of just double checking. There's only what Dan said, but with our insiders, I don't know who they know, but they're getting their take. It's secondhand, right? It's coming from someone who was at the practice, telling them what they think they saw and what they feel. That's where the Florida's information is coming from. I do feel other schools are better at keeping things locked in. I don't know if Florida just has moles everywhere, but I always feel like shit seeps out quickly when it comes to us and in other places like Oregon, for example. And look, they've got beat writers there. So if you take a look at On3 and kind of how they do their fan sites, not every team has designated beat writers that are just full blown. I follow Oregon football. Like your life consists of following these around. And Oregon has that. And for them not to be able to tap into what's going on, boy, oh boy, the tightly ran ship over there at Oregon. So look, you want it to be a tight nip. I mean, it's you get these practices coming up, and then we will have one more scrimmage. And then, like I said, after this week, we're still gonna practices, but the changes, the focus changes. It becomes more game oriented practice. I'd imagine those 2 practices will be for that game 1 focus. In a sense, maybe 1.5 of those weeks will be game preparation versus just spring camp.
Yeah, I do think it helps that game 1 is against Idaho, an
Must be
FCS
nice.
team, and they are. Yeah, I mean, granted, they are a good FCS team. They're always solid in contention, but albeit you're playing an FCS team. Yeah, you know what I mean. It's like, just do with that information as you will. It's a nice warm up game, and to be honest, it's much like last year where Oregon had a bunch of newcomers last year via the transfer portal. They opened up with Portland State, and you could tell the way that the offense was functioning was more so to kind of get some of these guys' feet wet and see how they adapt to the changes that happen in the offense schematically. And I kind of have a feeling that's what we're going to see game 1. I think Oregon obviously will try to put up as many points as possible and, attempt to shut out Idaho. But I think it's going to be more of a controlled, glorified scrimmage than anything else, just from the mindset of, the growth that it needs to happen there.
Look, there's so many new players. We're going to talk about breakout players here in just a moment, but there's so many new nuances and new pieces to this team that people are going to be eyeing, taking a look, and seeing how they're working and rolling. But I would be shocked if we got even a taste. It's probably going to be like it is now. It would honestly, we probably get more out of the practices we don't see than what we'll see against Idaho. That's my thoughts. It's about this. So if I know anything about Dan and coming from that Kirby Smart era, that's how those guys are going to function and operate. And Kirby's the king of setting up cupcakes for the first 11 games. So I expect Oregon to follow suit. Look, you can't hate on it. It is what it is. Saban did it forever and it works. I think that'll go away over the next 2 years. I think the conferences are going to realign where they had to play 9 conference schedules, which will beef that thing up a little bit. But Florida, we just hate ourselves. So that's where we're at with that.
It's not like that. It's not like this every year. Obviously, I'm sure you remember the absolute thrashing in game 1 of Dan's coaching career playing Georgia. 49-3 opening there. And then we have openers. Herbert was around opening against Auburn, and what did they call, like the Players Classic or whatever the opening was called back then. So I mean,
major rounds.
Yeah, it has been that way, but let me put it this way. I'm not mad about starting out against Idaho, in particular when you're bringing in so many new faces. Like these guys have all the talent in the world, but it's a whole different beast when you're throwing them together in one system and expecting that chemistry to be there. It's going to take some time to adjust to each other and, figure out how everybody moves on the field and what their adjustments are like. So I think Idaho is a great game 1. It may not be the most competitive game for fans outside of the Oregon fan base to watch, but definitely intrigued to see what we got going on.
It's game 1. You're gonna want to first 2 quarters. You'll be locked and loaded. It'll be a good time. But let's talk about it. Of course, the show is brought to you by BetUS, and when you use the link in the description, you get up to 125% back on your deposits for your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. When you deposit up to $2,000, you get 125% back for your first 3 deposits. And I had to get the odds on this to win the Big Ten championship. We were kind of talking about, foreshadowing the Ducks winning the Natty for the first time and also winning the Big Ten championship for the first time ever. Pun intended there. And I was like, I got to see what the odds are. What are their odds? To come in year 1 to be plus 200, son, you got to like it.
Right.
You gotta like it. You gotta like the swagger walking into the Big Ten. That's huge to win a conference. That's. I mean, look, it's still on the plus side, right? But that's juicy,
right? Especially considering some of the talent that's in there this year. I mean, obviously, you got the Ohio States of the world who does lead, in terms of odds making for the Big Ten. Sorry, my boy gets hyped up when we talk Ducks.
It's the Duck Nation, baby.
I'm sorry. Yeah, he's absolutely juiced for the Big Ten opener. So I can tell he's smashing that.
I speak
Ducks
dog.
plus
He's
200.
saying, click the link in the description to get your first 3 deposits. That's what he's doing. Look, the Buckeyes are only plus 150, so it's not like they're landslides. But again, Oregon coming into this thing, being second favorite behind Ohio, and I think you got to give Ohio the love. Both teams coming with new quarterbacks, but Ryan Day hasn't proven to win the big game, and in a sense, I guess Dan hasn't either. So this could be a draw or pick 'em if you had to for the Big Ten championship.
Yeah, I know. Actually, we were having a discussion on one of my pages today about, some certain odds, and someone asked about this, and I was like, I wonder. It's like Bet US knew right off the bat that we were thinking about it, cooking it up. So, I know there's a lot of people waiting on some of these lines to get dropped so they can go win some easy money.
I love it. Go check it out in the link in the description, boys. Bet US. Let's talk about our breakout players now. Guys transferring in. Got Cam Alexander, a couple other guys that we're going to talk about today. Talk about who they are and why they are your breakout players, Derek.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with one that I think is a very underrated addition to this defense, and Brandon Johnson. Played a lot of nickel position at Duke and did so very effectively. I know when he transferred in, one stat that really kind of blew me away was that if he would have been on this Oregon defense last year and carried over the statistics that he had, he would have led this team defense and tackles for loss last year. So that kind of gives you an idea how aggressive he is. At the point of attack, at the line of scrimmage, he's able to, maneuver in coverage extremely well, adapt. He can play a little safety, has played a little bit of corner in his time there, obviously, but does particularly well coming off the edge as well as a blitzer. So he's someone I'm really excited for. In terms of what we're hearing about him in particular, Tez Johnson and Everett Stewart have both had the opportunity to speak to the media, and this is someone in particular that they've named both times as someone who gives them the fits in practice. I think Tez's exact quote was, "This is the person who, he locked him up at one point." Tez was complimenting him on all his tools and skill sets he has there. And the reason I'm picking him for this particular breakout is just I think he's a very underrated player. I think it'd be really easy to pick like a Jabbar Muhammad or like a Kobe Savage, but he's one that I think is going to be a vital piece to this Oregon Ducks defense this year.
Somebody, again, these are players that will be fun to watch that Idaho game. Who we got next?
Yeah, next. Another one, we'll flip over to the offensive side of the ball a little bit, is Kenyon Sadiq. So, understand that Kenyon is coming in as the third tight end on the roster, which, on a lot of other teams, you'd kind of take a look at that and say, he's not going to be much of a factor. Might get some snaps or some special packages for him, but that's about it. I don't believe that to be the case at all here. All we've heard since spring ball, fall ball, all throughout camp is that he has made a massive jump both physically and in terms of what he's able to bring to the offense and his skill set there. I know Dylan Gabriel had come out and said he's been the most consistent player among camp in any position group, which is extremely, encouraging to hear, as he was, the number one player out of the state of Idaho just a year and a half ago. So he has a ton of skill set there, and I think he's going to be someone who has a good year. Obviously, he has Terrence Ferguson in front of him who projects to be, potentially a day 2 tight end pick next year in the NFL draft. So, he's not going to be a starter caliber, but, Will Stein had already said that we have a whole package set up just for Kenyon Sadiq. So we're able to get him the ball and able to let him maneuver in space a little bit. So I think he could have a very big year.
There's so many, when I was putting these pieces together, there's so many talented players that came in this year. Again, Evan Stewart, Dylan Gabriel, but that's just the beginning of the exciting transfer portal and then the recruiting class you guys have been putting together. This, again, there's a reason why it's plus 200 for these Ducks to win the Big Ten this year. And we're going to look at the natty odds here coming up too, because why wouldn't we? But who we got last on your breakout list, Derek?
Yeah, the last one I got, flipping back to the defensive side of the ball, back to the secondary, actually, I'm going to go with Cam Alexander, a cornerback transfer from UTSA, was an all-conference member in their conference last year, was the Frisco Bowl MVP with UTSA last year. Comes into this defense as someone who's going to make an immediate impact. I do expect him to start in that opposite boundary corner, opposite of Jabbar Muhammad. So I do think he will be a staple in this defense this year, but he's just not someone a lot of people are talking about at this point. Obviously Jabbar Muhammad's the big one. Everybody tends to, key in and focus on there. And a lot of the Duck fans, they know about Jaleel Florence, who's coming off an injury and was a starter for us last year and played exceptional as a young man. But Cam Alexander brings a very unique skill set. The speed he brings in here opens up a whole new world of possibilities for what they're able to do defensively in these coverages. You take a look at what Oregon was doing last year, in particular when they were playing Washington. They were getting burnt over the top. Obviously Washington had 3 NFL caliber wide receivers that were all capable of taking it off, but we didn't have that true speed corner. And that's exactly what Cam brings to the table. ball hawk abilities, that top end speed, and a perfect complement to what Jabbar Muhammad brings on the other side. So I think he's going to have a massive year as well, particularly if Jabbar does decide to start trailing some of these, the wide receiver ones on the opposing teams.
We'll have to do a recap on this in maybe a couple of weeks. We'll gauge on how your breakout players are doing and maybe follow it throughout the year. There's plenty of great breakout players. I think I've had a new one every week for Florida, so that's how it flows. But another great weekly episode. Again, these things are going to start flowing out as the season comes along. We've been doing 2 a week right now, 2 to 3. I mean, you guys get commits every other day, so those we don't count. But weekly shows where we kind of catch up to speed on things. We're up to 2, but again, during the season, if you guys want to follow along, there will be call-in shows after the game, each games. Some of these games may run late. That will play a factor, maybe. Derek the Duck likes to ride it long and hard. So we'll see.
Oh, geez, and we're gonna have some comments about that one right there.
Yeah, we're canceled. We'll see. So we'll see how that plays out. But it should be a fun, exciting season. A lot of stuff coming on Sundays. Probably after the fact recap shows. It's going to be a jam-packed season. We're excited to be a part of this and follow this thing along. Best case scenario, it's the Ducks versus the Gators in the national championship. It's the best thing I can ask for, and then we won't be able to do a show. Cody is going to have to come in because there's no way in hell that I'm going to be able to speak with you. But it's been fun thus far. It's been cordial to this point. So could you imagine we somehow in a crazy world line up in a play? If best case scenario, Oregon plays Florida in that first round of playoffs in the swamp.
Ooh.
And then you're forced to come here.
Whoa.
Well, only because I'm not going to Oregon. Only because I have a
Yeah.
kid. I can't go to Oregon. So just simply logistics.
You're allergic to the airplane? What you
Yeah,
talking about?
I got a kid. I'm pulling the kid card. So you got to come here to the swamp. And I got to get you into some Florida weather. I would like to go to Oregon, though. That'd be cool. But I want it in the swamp. So look, just give it to me. All right? Just let me have it.
I'm after what you've given me over the last week, I ain't giving you shit. You get nothing. All right, you get to come to Eugene and you will like it. God damn it.
You have a great time. Boys and girls, I hope you guys enjoyed today's content. As always, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe. I'm Sheldon. That's Derek the Duck Zelmer, and we'll see you boys next time. Peace and love, baby.
This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.